Welcome back to the channel. Today we're breaking down a major biotech development that, at first glance, looks like a clear win but has produced a surprisingly mixed reaction in the market. Milestone Pharmaceuticals has officially announced FDA approval for CARDAMYST, also known as etripamil nasal spray, for the acute treatment of symptomatic paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia, or PSVT, in adults. This approval is not just another incremental regulatory milestone. According to the company, it represents the first FDA-approved PSVT treatment in more than 30 years and introduces a completely new way of managing these episodes, with a rapid-acting, self-administered nasal spray designed to be used outside of a hospital setting. Despite that, the stock sold off sharply following the announcement, creating confusion among investors and traders who expected a more straightforward bullish response. In this video, we're going to slow everything down and walk through what was approved, why it matters clinically, what the trial data actually shows, why the stock dropped anyway, how Wall Street is currently framing valuation, and what the realistic bull and bear cases look like now that regulatory risk has been removed. Milestone Pharmaceuticals announced that the FDA has approved CARDAMYST, etripamil nasal spray, as a prescription medication for the conversion of acute symptomatic PSVT episodes to sinus rhythm in adults, with the company guiding that the product is expected to reach retail pharmacies in the first quarter of 2026. From a regulatory perspective, this approval matters for two reasons. First, it validates a novel delivery mechanism for a cardiovascular drug that has historically required intravenous administration in a healthcare setting. Second, it targets a market that has seen minimal innovation for decades, which is why Milestone emphasizes that this is the first FDA-approved PSVT treatment in more than 30 years. The company estimates that more than 2 million Americans diagnosed with PSVT could now have access to a rapid-acting treatment option designed for self-administration, potentially reducing reliance on emergency departments and hospital-based care. CARDAMYST is described as a rapid-acting calcium channel blocker delivered via nasal spray and used on an as-needed basis during PSVT episodes. The company's value proposition is straightforward and intentionally bold. Instead of waiting for emergency care and intravenous treatment, patients may be able to treat an episode quickly on their own. Historically, many effective PSVT conversion therapies require IV administration, which increases cost, delays treatment, and disrupts patients' lives. Milestone is positioning CARDAMYST as a way to reduce that burden if the drug performs in real-world settings as it did in clinical trials. This is where the opportunity extends beyond clinical efficacy into economics and patient behavior, because emergency department avoidance is meaningful for patients, providers, and payers alike. The FDA approval is supported by a clinical development program that Milestone says includes safety data from more than 1,800 participants and over 2,000 PSVT episodes. The most cited efficacy data comes from the Phase 3 RAPID trial, which the company notes was published in The Lancet in 2023. In that trial, 64% of participants who self-administered CARDAMYST converted from supraventricular tachycardia to sinus rhythm within 30 minutes, compared to 31% in the placebo group, resulting in a hazard ratio of 2.62 with a p-value below 0.01. Median time to conversion was also significantly faster, with CARDAMYST achieving conversion in a median of 17 minutes versus 54 minutes for placebo. From a patient experience standpoint, that difference is meaningful, as PSVT episodes are often distressing, disruptive, and anxiety-inducing, and faster resolution can materially improve quality of life. Before we go any further, it's important to be clear that this content is strictly for educational and informational purposes. Always do your own research and consult with a qualified financial professional before making investment decisions. On the safety side, the most frequently reported adverse events in randomized trials were generally mild to moderate and transient, including nasal discomfort or congestion, runny nose, throat irritation, and nosebleeds, with fewer than 2% of participants discontinuing due to adverse events. As expected for a cardiovascular therapy, the label includes important warnings and contraindications related to fainting and conduction system conditions, which will play a role in prescribing decisions and real-world adoption, particularly among patients with more complex cardiac histories. Milestone scheduled a conference call and webcast with slides for 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Monday, December 15, 2025, to discuss the approval and outline launch readiness, payer strategy, and near-term priorities. This call marks a critical transition point for the company. Regulatory risk has been removed, but execution risk now takes center stage. The market's focus shifts from whether the drug can be approved to whether the company can successfully launch it, secure reimbursement, educate physicians, and drive adoption at a pace that justifies valuation expectations. On Friday, December 12th, Milestone stock reached an intraday high near $3.06 before closing at $2.41, down more than 18% on the day despite the approval headline. While this reaction may feel counterintuitive, it follows several well-established market dynamics. First, there is the classic buy the rumor, sell the news effect, where traders bid up a binary event ahead of time and sell into certainty once the outcome is known, particularly when approval was widely anticipated. Second, FDA approval ends one type of risk but introduces another. Commercial stage risk is slower, more expensive, and more execution-heavy, involving payer negotiations, sales infrastructure, manufacturing, and patient uptake. Third, financing expectations shift immediately after approval because launching a drug requires capital, and the market quickly reassesses dilution risk and cash runway. It's also important to note that Milestone itself emphasizes building access and distribution ahead of a Q1 2026 retail launch, meaning that meaningful revenue is not immediate. That gap between approval and cash flow matters to valuation models and helps explain why the stock did not simply re-rate higher on the headline alone. As of September 30th, 2025, Milestone reported $82.6 million in cash, cash equivalents, and short-term investments. In addition, the company disclosed a royalty purchase agreement with RTW Investments and Affiliates, under which RTW agreed, subject to conditions, to pay a $75 million purchase price tied to FDA marketing approval by a deadline extended to December 31st, 2025. Milestone has stated that it anticipates the FDA approval announced on December 12th satisfies the requirements to receive this payment, subject to customary closing conditions. If completed, this transaction would materially strengthen the balance sheet heading into launch and reduce near-term financing pressure. Forecasts for development to launch biotech companies are inherently fragile, as small changes in launch pace, payer coverage, or patient uptake can dramatically alter modeled value. Still, consensus targets shape expectations. As of mid-December 2025, MarketBeat shows a consensus hold rating based on 6 analysts, with an average 12-month price target of $4.50, ranging from $4 to $5. Tip Ranks reports a similar average target of $4.50, framing consensus as a moderate buy. Stock Analysis lists a higher average target of $6.33 with a range from $4 to $10, but notes that those estimates were last updated in September 2025 and may not fully reflect post-approval dynamics. MarketBeat also reported a downgrade from Wall Street Zen shortly after approval, while Jefferies raised its target modestly and maintained a hold rating, citing expectations that Q2 2026 could be the first quarter with significant sales. Earlier in 2025, Wells Fargo initiated coverage with an overweight rating and a $4 just target. Taken together, these views suggest a market that wants proof of execution before assigning a higher valuation. In the bullish scenario, Milestone successfully converts FDA approval into a credible commercial ramp. Insurance coverage comes together, cardiologists and electrophysiologists adopt the product, and emergency department avoidance becomes a real-world economic argument rather than just a clinical talking point. Clean execution would give the company a clear path to monetizing an FDA-approved cardiovascular therapy and potentially expanding into additional indications over time. In the bearish scenario, launch friction slows progress. Coverage delays, slower than expected adoption, or higher commercialization costs push revenue timelines out, forcing additional financing sooner than investors hope. In that environment, valuation can remain pressured even with an approved product because approval alone does not guarantee profitability. As of December 15, 2025, the story around Milestone Pharmaceuticals has fundamentally changed. CARDAMYST is approved, and the stock now trades on execution rather than regulatory uncertainty. The market's focus is squarely on the upcoming investor call, the operational details surrounding a Q1 2026 launch, and how convincingly management can outline a path from clinical success to sustainable revenue while maintaining financial flexibility. From here, the key drivers will not be headlines, but evidence. Evidence of coverage, adoption, and real-world impact. If you found this analysis helpful, consider liking the video and subscribing for more structured